If you're anything like me, you've had some past relationships, both with people with an avoidant attachment style, but also people with strong narcissistic tendencies and traits, or maybe even full-blown NPD, narcissistic personality disorder. But there can be some big overlap in the symptoms between those two things. And if you've got somebody new that maybe you've just started dating and you're seeing some red flags, it can be really hard to know which of those two things it is because of the similarities. So in this video, I'm going to share with you the 5 key differences between the avoidant attachment style and NPD. So let's talk about it. Difference number 1, empathy. Narcissists really are incapable of true empathy. Empathy is the ability for us to put ourselves in the shoes of someone else and really feel what they're feeling, particularly in response to something that we have done to them. A narcissist can't really feel what somebody else is feeling that they've caused pain or harm to. They just don't do it. But they can fake it sometimes if they feel there's benefit to be gained by doing that. But you might hear the narcissist say things like, well, I'm sorry you feel that way. But then their hurtful behavior just keeps happening again and again and again. Now, the avoidant actually will feel empathy for the situation, but they might struggle to communicate it verbally, in which case you might get a text or an email, or maybe even a handwritten letter with them taking ownership of their behavior and acknowledging the hurt that they caused you. But they will feel it and they will acknowledge it in some way. They just might not do it verbally because that's really uncomfortable for them. Another way you might know if it's a narcissist, let's say that you are sick and you text them, oh, I'm really sick today. I'm so sorry I can't get together with you. And they might turn it around and say, oh yeah, I was really sick last week. I was even worse than you are. And they kind of just make it about them rather than feeling sorry for your situation and maybe even offering to help. Oh, I'm so sorry you're sick. Can I bring you anything? Can I get you anything? Can I take care of you in some way? They're not going to do that. They're just going to turn it around and make it about them. Difference number 2, response to criticism. Narcissists, of course, have a huge ego, although the huge ego is masking incredibly low self-esteem and basically feelings of worthlessness. But they project this gigantic ego out to the world. So they don't like to be criticized. They don't like any form of feedback because it basically echoes back to them that they are indeed actually worthless. And it just sort of amplifies all those negative doubts that they already have. So they hate receiving any form of feedback or criticism from anybody. And if you give them any sort of feedback or criticism, they might say something like, oh, you're so sensitive. Or more likely, they'll go down a list of every single thing that you've ever done wrong in their eyes to them over the course of the time that they've known you. So they're again making it all about them and ignoring the feedback that you had for them, however well-intentioned. Now, the avoidant might go quiet as well if faced with feedback or criticism. They might stonewall you. That is kind of common with both avoidants and narcissists. So they might go silent for a little bit, but they will eventually circle back around to the issue, at least a little bit. But again, they get uncomfortable with intense, deeply personal and emotional conversations, so they might do it via email or text or a letter, like I mentioned earlier, rather than a verbal face-to-face conversation. One key thing you might notice with a narcissist, if you've had some sort of argument or disagreement, they might actually post things on social media about toxic people or narcissists and vaguely implying that that's you, usually not directly stating it, vaguely implying that that's you, even though they are the one displaying the toxic behavior. Difference number 3, intimacy patterns. Of course, the narcissist is known for love bombing in the early stages where they really get you hooked on them. You feel like this is the most intense and most amazing relationship you've ever been in. And then they slowly begin to whittle away at your self-esteem and make you question everything you thought you knew about yourself. And then when you're at rock bottom, that's usually when they discard you. So you will typically see some variation of that pattern with the narcissist and probably eventually circling back around to kind of hoover you back in after they've completely broken up with you and jumped into a new relationship with somebody else. They will come back to you most likely. Whereas the avoidant will care for you consistently. They just will struggle to communicate it verbally, especially after the initial stages of the relationship have passed and you're beginning to develop a deeper relationship with one another. Things are getting a little bit more quote unquote real, and they're beginning to kind of feel the pressure of things moving to the next level. And that scares the hell out of them because as a young child, of course, the avoidant, whether we're talking about a fearful or a dismissive avoidant, the avoidant kind of learned that the best way to keep themselves safe was to keep everybody out here. If you never let anybody in too close to your heart, then you won't get hurt. That's what they learned at a young age. And so that is the way they will behave now in adulthood to basically keep themselves safe. They see you as you start to move things forward and progress in the relationship. They see that as a sure sign that you're probably about to leave them. Difference number 4, self-image. Narcissists, as I've already mentioned, have a huge ego and a huge sense of self. And while that is masking incredibly low self-esteem and feelings of worthlessness, they're never going to show that to the real world. So the narcissist will constantly be talking about achievements and things that they've done and places that they've gone and famous people that they've met, and expect constant praise, attention, and validation for talking about those things nonstop. And if you mention something that you've done or a place that you've gone or a famous person you've met, they're going to somehow turn it around to where what they did was better than what you did, with subtle jabs and maybe minor criticisms. And this one might be the biggest key difference between avoidants and narcissists, because avoidants actually hate that level of scrutiny under the microscope of talking about achievements and amazing places that they've been and things like that. That actually makes them uncomfortable. So an avoidant is very unlikely to be talking about those things. And if you bring up something that the avoidant has done that you thought was amazing, they might actually engage in a lot of negative self-talk to kind of downplay the achievement rather than acknowledging it and thanking you for the compliment. Key difference number 5, treatment of others. Narcissists, as we've already established, have that huge ego, and they build themselves up at other people's expense. And they also value their appearance above everything else. They always want to look their best and outshine other people when they're doing it. So they might even make subtle digs at their friends or family or coworkers about how they're dressed. Oh, you really left the house looking like that today, and things of that nature to make themselves feel better about how they look. Avoidance, because they fear that deeply intimate and emotional conversation and connection with other people, won't often put themselves in large social gatherings, work events, things of that nature. They might politely decline gatherings of that nature just to avoid the uncomfortability. Is that a word? Uncomfortability? But they will appreciate the invitation to a gathering of that nature, and they will likely send a gift or do something thoughtful for the person who invited them, even if they're not really comfortable attending the event. And when in that group setting, one key way to know if it's a narcissist is they love to micromanage and control everything, because deep inside they feel completely out of control. They feel completely worthless. So if they can control their external environment, which of course is virtually impossible, but they make every attempt to do so. So if they can try and micromanage and control everything, it somehow brings them comfort, even if it's eventually all going to fall apart anyway, which it usually does. Now, either way, if you've got an avoidant, either a dismissive avoidant or a fearful avoidant, or a narcissist, the relationship is going to be extremely difficult for you to make work unless they have some level of awareness that they have this issue and they're actively engaged in trying to work on it in some way. Therapy, some other form of self-help, meditation, yoga, some sort of mindfulness practice. If they're engaged in something to try and help them rectify this issue, that's great. You can work with that. You can be patient with that as they kind of work through this process and slowly get better over time. But if they have no level of self-awareness, and in my experience, most people who are avoidant or narcissists don't have any self-awareness. If they don't, it's going to be very difficult for you to make this work, because ultimately you're just going to have to accept them for who they are, right now with the understanding that they might not ever change and that this is always going to be a problematic relationship, and you're just going to have to give in and allow their poor behaviors. It doesn't mean you can't set boundaries, doesn't mean you can't enforce boundaries, but you're likely going to receive some abuse, emotionally, verbally, hopefully not physical. If you do, you should absolutely run for the hills. But emotional and verbal abuse is almost a guarantee. And even if you set boundaries and even if you enforce those boundaries, you're still likely going to be putting up with some of that. And you have to be willing to put up with some of that if you're going to make this relationship work. Where are you at on this journey? Remember, I do offer one-on-one coaching, either live phone calls, Zoom calls, that kind of thing, or you can send me your problem and I'll record a custom video just for you and send it back to you in just a couple of days. If you want more information about that, check the link down in the bio or this card right up here. But for now, I'll see you in the next video.